Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Spanish Football Podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides. I'm joined by a somewhat bedraggled but still lovely Sid Lowe. Hello, Sidley. You all right?
Good morning, Philip. How are you?
Good. The morning after the night before, Sid's in Barcelona in a below-par hotel by his standards.
Well, not so much by my standards, just certain. It's a very tall
standards.
hotel. It's a very tall hotel where the lifts don't work very well. So you think you're, 1 minute from your hotel room, you might still be 15 minutes from your hotel room.
That's a design flaw, I would say, yeah.
It's a very big design flaw, yeah.
You were in Barcelona at the Camp Nou last night to see Barcelona be proclaimed champions, beating Real Madrid by 2-0. More on that to come in just a second. There were other fixtures in La Liga this weekend. The Clásico always tends to eclipse everything else, but not on this show, guys. Not on this show. We will talk about other things as well. This is what happened on Matchday 35. Levante produced a massive win for them. They were 2-0 down after 20 minutes at home to Osasuna, but they came back and won 3-2, thanks in large part by Osasuna goalkeeper Sergio Herrera just getting himself sent off in one of the most bizarre sequences I've ever seen. He just came running out of his penalty area to try and get to a ball, doesn't get it, and just decides to handle it instead, like 20 meters outside the box. It's unbelievably weird.
It's like he doesn't realize he's outside the box, even though he's a very, very long way outside his box.
Bizarre, really bizarre. And Levante ended up winning, which is massive for them and obviously has a lot of effect on many other teams at the bottom of the table. Saturday saw Elche and Alaves play out a 1-1 draw. Sevilla with an unbelievably important and equally as dramatic 2-1 win against Espanyol. Espanyol still haven't won in 18 games. Yeah. Atletico Madrid beaten 1-0 at home by Celta Vigo. Borja El Panda Iglesias scoring the only goal of the game. What a goal it is. Go and watch it because it's magnificent. And Real Sociedad and Real Betis playing out a 2-2 draw in San Sebastian. A drama and incident-filled game, which Betis should have won. They were 2-0 up. And then Real Sociedad really could have won with some very good chances in injury time. Mallorca and Villarreal played out a 1-1 draw on Sunday. Valencia went to Bilbao and beat Athletic Club 1-0. Huge result for them. Oviedo and Getafe 0-0. And Barcelona beating Real Madrid 2-0. Monday Night Football is in Vallecas. It's Rayo against Girona. If Girona get a point, then Oviedo are officially mathematically relegated. Now, the season is almost over, but the content never stops. If you want full TSFP coverage of the World Cup this summer and Spain's inevitable march towards the trophy, join us at patreon.com/TSFP. Sid and Al are both going to be there. And over the summer, as always, we're podding exclusively for patrons. You can sign up from €4.75 a month. It is even cheaper if you get annual membership. So, Sydney, the Clásico, hey? How about that Clásico, huh?
How about it? It was, I suppose, in some ways, a portrait of the way the season's been, in that fundamentally Barcelona were just too good. That there were only very brief moments when you thought Madrid might make a game of it. They had a tiny little bit of a flurry in the middle of the first half, and then a little bit of a flurry towards the start of the second, and probably should have had a penalty when Bellingham went down in the area with what looked suspiciously like an elbow from Eric Garcia. But fundamentally, this was Barcelona being the better side, comfortably being the better side, and actually not, it seemed to me, really, really going for the throat. I think one of the reasons why they didn't go for the throat is that moment that I mentioned, that Real Madrid looked like they might get in the game. They got a couple of balls over the top. There's a chance for Gonzalo Garcia, which he puts just wide. There's a moment when Bellingham breaks through and he's got the opportunity to deliver the cross to the far side, and it gets cut out, I think, by Eric Garcia. There's a moment after that which I loved, which is Pedri saying, "Whoa," and literally putting his foot on the ball. Saying, "Stop, we play. And we don't let this become wild." At this point, Barcelona are already 2-0 up. And then Barcelona just played their way to the title.
Rondo. It was basically a one-long rondo, wasn't it?
Yeah. And there was a little bit of a flurry of activity, as I say earlier. In the second half, it got from momentarily it got confrontational, which I think probably would have suited Real Madrid more than Barcelona. I did notice, and I know this is a bit cruel, but when there was a first set two and the players kind of waded in on each other, the last man onto the scene, in fact, the man who didn't want to be on the scene, was Tchouaméni. He wasn't going to get involved in this particular fight. And Barcelona were just stronger than them. better than them, better with the ball all the way through the game. But for Courtois, maybe there would have been a couple of more goals as well. And it was them completing a league title in which basically since October, they have been much, much the better side.
And yet on February the 16th, Sid, Real Madrid were top.
Yes, and I should hold up my hands here and be honest about this. And it's only about 6 or 8 weeks ago when I said, laughing admittedly, but I said, Real Madrid are going to win the league, aren't they? Because at that point, you thought, how can they keep being this bad? Well, at least I thought this. I'm not going to accuse you of thinking this. How can they keep being this bad and still be this close to the top of the table? I've seen this moment before, and it's one of those where they're going to somehow get away with it, and they absolutely have not got away with it.
We were very much aligned in our thinking, Sid, on that particular subject. Do we pick stuff out about yesterday's game? Because I think it's difficult to sort of analyze that game given the context, but I'm sure there are things that you will want to pick up on.
Well, I suppose you pick up on it in the context of the season, don't you?
Okay.
Which is to say that, I mean, let's talk about. Maybe let's run through some of them quickly that I thought were a portrait of the season. One, obviously, is the one I've already mentioned, which is Pedri saying, "Right, we play," and that's what Pedri's done most of the year. I think he's not had the continuity that he had last year, and I don't think he's quite reached the level he's been at last year. But I think he's been very, very good indeed. Obviously, the disappointment yesterday was that Lamine Yamal was missing, because if this is anyone's league title, it's probably his in terms of the quality and the consistency.
And maybe if Lamine is on the pitch, maybe he's one player that doesn't sort of take his foot off the accelerator and keeps going.
Or at least that when he gets those sightings of goal, he puts it in the net rather than with Courtois saving them. I thought what we saw, a couple of other things that we saw, I think are very interesting. It's not the story of the season because it's only happened late on, but Gavi is very definitely back in. And we didn't think he would be, actually. When he came back from injury, we didn't think he would play as much as he has, and he's played a lot. I guess we saw Marcus Rashford score a brilliant goal. We've talked about this a lot. Fantastic statistics this year. Pretty much the perfect low move, and yet still that doubt about whether or not they would pay 30 million plus his salary to keep him. And he was trying not to be drawn into that last night, albeit Ferran Torres was trying to get him to be drawn into it. Say, "Oh, you can stay. This will be great, and you'll see you'll see all these celebrations, and you're going to end up staying." I thought, obviously,
Ferran Torres, by the way, I think that was his best game for Barca.
I thought he was very, very good indeed, and he's had a lot of good games this year. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we still think that Barcelona centre forward should be a bit better than him, to be honest. But his performance level over the season has been largely really quite good, and I think he is a really, really good player. Possibly as the guy that kind of covers all of those forward positions. The other player I wanted to pick up on. Well, but actually, there's two more. One was Eric Garcia, who's played everywhere and more minutes than anyone else, and more games than anyone else, and been really useful across pitch. The other is Gerard Martin.
I mean, he was the backup left back last season.
Yeah,
and now he's the first choice centre back.
And his first choice centre back. And I actually think he's a big part of the reason that Koubarsi is okay. Koubarsi, for my liking, Koubarsi still gets caught with the ball over the top of him too often. Doesn't see the runners on his shoulders quite often when that line's high. But I think a lot of the time it's Gerard who's I wouldn't quite call it cleaning up, because he's not this sort of athlete that comes flying around and makes the challenge and rescues you from having been opened up a little bit. But there's a degree of that, or there's a degree of him seeing things and preventing trouble from happening.
I was looking at the Barcelona back four yesterday, and I was thinking, if you told Barcelona fans at the start of the season that, the definitive Clásico, Matchday 35, this is the back four that you're going to start that game with, Eric Garcia at right back, Pau Koubarsi and Gerard Martin as a centre-back pairing, and João Cancelo at left-back, it would have been like, what, Eric Garcia plays right-back for us now. Gerard Martin, the substitute left-back, is our first-choice centre-back. Where's João Cancelo come from? He's back at the club. Like, everybody would have just been incredulous that is the starting back four for the biggest game of the season, certainly domestically. And I guess a lot of that is down to Hansi Flick, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that yesterday was a lot about Flick. Flick's father passed away in the morning, and obviously he chose to be there, and I think there was a real sense of them kind of supporting him and making this about him. And I think it is his league title in many ways. I think because of the management of exactly what you just said, of finding places for players, finding a commitment for players. I think obviously it's probably enhanced this idea is probably enhanced and possibly also slightly exaggerated by what's happened at Real Madrid. So his management of a dressing room in the way that Real Madrid haven't been able to, and his ability to get performances and effort and collectivity out of his players in a way that Real Madrid haven't, I think obviously makes that seem like an even bigger achievement than perhaps it is. I think it underlines how difficult it would be. And obviously for me, I think it goes back to what he said, Hansi Flick, after the game against Rayo back in, was it August? I think it's week three.
Yeah, egos, baby.
And he comes out with this line, which is that egos kill success. And the reason he comes out with that line at that point is because he's worried it might happen. Because he can see the direction of travel in the attitude of some of his players. And he found a way to prevent that getting out of hand. And if you like, to realign things and to rechannel the attitudes of the players and so on. And I think in that sense, this is very much his success. He's fortunate in the personalities of some of them, but that doesn't mean they're all easy to handle. And I think he's done a fantastic job in that sense.
Yeah, as you said, this is Hansi Flick's league title, and credit to Joan Laporta for bringing him in.
Yes, of course. No, definitely.
A terrific signing, the best signing of the second Joan Laporta era, without doubt, has been Hansi Flick. And let's see now. We'll get on to Real Madrid in just a second, but people are talking about potential Barcelona domestic dynasty. I mean, don't get carried away, because whenever we start doing this, the other team pulls its act together. But two league titles won pretty well, pretty convincingly, and with a certain style of football, which is important to Barcelona as well. I think this season they've been a little bit less spectacular than last season, obviously because of the injuries. Rafinha missed 2 games last season. Neither of them were for injury. I think Pedri missed 1 game with gastroenteritis, stomach problems. No, they weren't injured last season. Both of those key players have missed long stretches of the season through injury. So slightly less spectacular, better defensively. Joan Garcia coming in is obviously a big part of that, and without doubt the best team in Spain by some distance.
Yeah, you're right there. By the way, that Joan Garcia I think has had a very good season, very good season. I think
maybe their player of the season.
Well, I think Lamine is, but yes, he could be there. But I think Lamine is probably player of the season in Spain, just generally. That's slightly undermined, I suppose, by how much he's missed at the end of the season, and by that difficult period with his what did we describe that
groin.
That pubalgia is? Groin. Sportsman's hernia, I think it's called. Anyway, that meant that he wasn't that great through the autumn. But when Barcelona started to really rack up the results, it's Lamine. And Lamine, just the quality and the level of his play, I think is higher than anyone else in Spain this year. There's a couple of other names I've thrown in over the course of the season, but I think he's probably at the top, with the possible exception, if you're looking at it in terms of expectation, of Murici, who's been phenomenal. But you're right with Joan Garcia. I think there have been moments when Barcelona haven't been that impressive, where he's kept them in games that they might not otherwise have been kept in. And for 25 million euros, it seems like a very, very good bit of business from their point of view.
Yeah, a huge bargain. Oportunidad de mercado. It didn't necessarily feel like we must go out and buy a goalkeeper, because they did have Ter Stegen, but it was unmissable, a bit of business, which they jumped on. Real Madrid, Sid. Real Madrid. I thought they were abysmal yesterday, to be honest. Genuinely terrible.
Did you?
I
didn't think they were awful. I just thought they were. I just thought they were kind of tepid, as I say. But a couple of brief moments when they sort of sparked into life. But basically, they looked like a team that knew the title had gone, that knew the other team was better than them, and wasn't going to do too much to change that.
Well, isn't that awful?
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
That's terrible. They turned up to just play that game. They were like, all right, you've won the league. We're not going to win the league. It is all over. Let's just get this game out of the way. A whole thing at the Camp Nou, and I thought it was terrible. And they couldn't play the ball out from the back, Sid. They could not play the ball out from the back, not once.
But you notice that the only time they did with any kind of effectiveness was when Asensio did those launches that he does. And a couple of them came.
That's not playing the ball out from the back.
Exactly.
That's playing the long ball forward. Yeah,
exactly.
They tried.
And a couple of them kind of came off almost by chance. There's one that Kubasi makes a mess of, which is the one that Vinicius has the chance to lob it over Joan Garcia and doesn't do a particularly great job. And Joan Garcia stands tall and so on. But no, it was as you say, it was Real Madrid playing out the season because they had to, not because they really thought there was a chance that they might not play out the season. You know, that they went there knowing that they couldn't prevent Barcelona being title winners and not seemingly that interested in preventing them from being title winners last night.
I mean, they were fortunate, I guess, that Barcelona didn't go for the absolute jugular and really try and put a historical defeat past them, because it's up there with being Real Madrid's worst week in living memory.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been even worse if we were talking about a 6-0 win for Barcelona, which at times it felt it could have been yesterday. But it's still been an absolutely historically, almost, you know, without precedent, bad end of the season for Real Madrid.
Yeah. And the end of the season really is, if you like, the final culmination of an all-round season that's bad. You know, and I think we talked about this the other day, so I don't want to labor it too much, but I think it's worth briefly saying that the issue, the fight between Tchouaméni and Fede Valverde and everything that's gone with it, is kind of, it's partly a product of the tension of the poor results. It's partly a product of if you like, the mental state they're in because they haven't won anything, but it's also partly a cause of them not winning anything. Yeah. And this is a team that's had a divided dressing room all the way through. That the nature of the culture, essentially Real Madrid's collapse or crisis is a cultural crisis, and it's a crisis about mechanics. It's a crisis about work ethic. It's a crisis about the ethos, the culture, the way you go about things. And in that sense, it is. And it would be a bit simplistic to just kind of point at the top, but in a way you have to, because it's the way that the club expresses itself and goes about things. Now, that's not to say this is a disaster and everything has to be torn up, although right now it must feel like that for a lot of Barcelona, a lot of Real Madrid fans. Because obviously, you know, it's only a couple of years ago that this team won the European Cup. And Arbeloa made that point. He said 17 of these players were European Cup winners 2 years ago. And that is true. But of course, and the risk is that then you start saying, well, what happened 2 years ago? And of course, and it's, you know, there's a symbolism there. There's a reality there. There's a bit of both there. You go, well, Mbappé came. Now, it's far too simplistic to say this guy ruined everything. But I also think it's far too simplistic to just dismiss that as part of the explanation for what's happened to Real Madrid.
It's a cause, isn't it?
It is one of the causes. It is part of the shift in dynamics, the shift in culture at the club, the way that the dressing room responds to things, the approach to also how you play. You know, we've talked a lot this year about the numbers of pressing, who runs the least, and he's at the top of the list. Partly with Vinicius, although I think actually one of the things that's happened in the narrative, the discourse in recent weeks, is there has been a feeling, well, at least Vinicius turns up. And at least Vinicius breaks his balls for the team. Yes, he's all the things that Vinicius is. And maybe for the team is the wrong part of that phrase, but at least he puts the effort in.
There was a furious online reaction, and we're not all about discussing furious online reactions on this podcast, but Mbappé, during the game, put a story on Instagram. Did you see this?
Saying a la Madrid or whatever with the little white hearts when they're already 2-0 down.
They're 2-0 down.
Surely you do that at kickoff, don't you?
Yeah.
And then you celebrate if they win.
Yes. It's just another. I mean, you know, it's a stupid and ridiculous thing for us to be discussing, but I guess it just points to the fact that he is being consistently poorly advised on these kind of things, and that is not helping. And I'm telling you guys, Thursday night at the Bernabeu, Real Madrid against Oviedo, it is going to be generationally toxic inside that stadium. There is already a movement to whistle and boo specifically for Kylian Mbappé in the 10th minute to make their furious anger felt directly towards him in the 10th minute. There's going to be a horrendous atmosphere, and he has not helped himself at all.
No, he hasn't. And it's very interesting, you know, because when you listen to Mbappé talk, he's very, very eloquent. He's clearly very bright. He's got an analytical element to him. There's depth to him. It's not simplistic. And yet you look at the way he's handled certain parts of
he's also got a whole company working for him too. There's a business behind him. There's 50 people, I'm sure, working for him, advising him on every aspect of this.
And it's remarkable, put bluntly, it's remarkable that he's been this stupid. Because as I say, he clearly is very bright. Now, let's use the Sardinia thing, shall we? So going to Sardinia when you've got either a couple of days off or you're in your recovery process and you've been told you can is not a terrible crime. But you are a guy that's won a World Cup. You're 28, I believe. You understand the politics. You know, you've been at PSG. You actually had to fight really hard to get out of PSG. You were used politically a lot. You would have seen the consequences of saying the wrong thing. I'm just amazed that he didn't manage that differently. You know, even going to Sardinia, you can still manage it differently in terms of when you're seen, making sure you're not seen. You know, it's 3 weeks from the end of the season. Go in a couple of weeks' time, just before the World Cup. And as I say, I mean, I don't want to jump on this too much because there's a bit many things that fundamentally it doesn't really matter. But the optics and your management of your image is really, really bad.
It does matter in terms of the fan reaction towards him, which is really turned. Last month, it has turned savagely on Kylian Mbappé, genuinely.
No, I do think that's a little unfair. And I do think that there will, without any doubt, be a part of of Kylian Mbappe's kind of entourage, for want of a better word, that part of the dressing room that is more aligned with him than with others will be looking at thinking, this isn't fair. What about this guy? And what about that guy? And what about the other guy? And they'd be right. They'd be right to think that. But he is Kylian Mbappé. You can't allow this to happen for your own sake and also for the image of the club.
Are you going to Real Madrid against Real Oviedo on Thursday?
I am indeed, yeah.
Yeah? Are you working,
I mean, there's a Spanish phrase, isn't there? To fish in choppy waters. Could Oviedo fish in Real Madrid's choppy waters?
Fishing in choppy waters. We've got the podcast title for today. Beautiful.
I mean, it's literally a choppy river, isn't it? It's pescar en río revuelto, but there you go.
All right, let's leave the Clásico chat and talk about the game that you went to on Saturday. I hold my hands up. I was being a little bit sarcastic, a little bit mocking. I was like, why have you gone all the way to Sevilla to see Sevilla against Espanyol? I was like, what are you doing, Sid? Just watch it on the telly like everyone else. What are you doing? And then you're rewarded with this extraordinarily dramatic second half where Espanyol take the lead. Insane drama. I mean, Sevilla had scored. They went 1-0 up. Was ruled out for offside. Then Espanyol take the lead. Sevilla are in a whole world of trouble. And then just a ludicrous individual goal from Andrés Castrin, the centre-back of all people, who just goes on this mazy, unbelievable run and scores. And then what happens in injury time, Sid?
Well, then they get this brilliant 91st minute winner, which is essentially just a pretty aimless punt up the pitch. And Alexis Sanchez controls it with his shins. But it's not accidental, it's deliberate. It sort of bounces and he kind of leans into it and puts his shins on the ball to control it and just drop it off at the feet of Akor Adams, who's on the edge of the area. And he curls this lovely, lovely shot into the corner and the place goes absolutely wild. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I was thinking that, this was the game of the weekend, obviously beyond the Clásico and beyond Barcelona winning the league title or potentially winning the league title, because of all the games down the bottom. And, I asked on Twitter, which game should I go to? There's a direct head-to-head between Elche and Alaves. It looks like I dodged a bullet there because it wasn't very good. But this was two really big teams potentially in trouble. The Espanyol story of 17 games without a win at this point, now 18, with Sevilla really very much in trouble. And also I'd seen the game on Monday that Sevilla had won at the Sánchez Pizjuán, where the atmosphere was wild, just incredible. And we saw the footage of them chucking bog roll and the whole place making loads of noise and so on and so forth. And it was just completely brilliant. And I thought, well, it's going to be like that again. And actually it wasn't. I was really struck by how flat it was until Castrin scored that goal. And it was like the place suddenly realized we can do this, because there wasn't very much, because truth be told, Sevilla aren't a great team. And yet at that moment, there was this real belief and it exploded. I loved Castrin's response to the goal after the game. He said, we know it opened up and I just kind of kept running because I could see that there was a space. And by the He was exhausted. The shot's not that great. Dimitrovic makes a mess of it. When everyone starts celebrating, Castro literally goes on the floor on his knees. And I thought, oh, that's the emotion. It wasn't the emotion. It was just he physically couldn't stand up anymore. And then you get the Akor Adams goal at the end, and it was just fantastic.
So what's going to happen at the bottom of the table, Sid?
I don't know. I liked Luis Garcia's line. He referred to this as being like the Marx Brothers cabin. If you haven't seen this, it's a film called Night at the Opera, and it's a tiny cabin on a cruise ship, and it ends up with 18 people in it. And he says the fight against relegation is like that. Well, I think they and Valencia have just about stepped out of the cabin, which isn't to say they can't be dragged back into it. I think they probably can. But I actually think this weekend gave us a tiny bit of clarity on relegation. As you've already said, mathematically, it's given us probably Oviedo going down tonight, probably, unless Rayo beat Girona, but Oviedo will go down. Levante on Friday night, I think very definitely thought they'd given themselves a chance with that incredible 3-2, and Etera Young scoring in the 90th minute, having not scored since, when was it? August, was it? I think it was October. Sorry, okay, I'm making it slightly worse than it really was. I think Levante probably get dragged into it, and then you look at it down there and you think Elche, Alaves, and Espanyol. I mean, I know I'm stating the obvious because you've all seen it because it's 18 games without a win, but you sort of kept thinking, but it only takes one win. When Ty Dolan scored on Saturday, I thought this is it now. This is their step towards safety. To put this into context for people, to try and give people an example, an idea of how tight it is at the bottom. That one goal for Sevilla, that one goal from Akor Adams, saw them climb 6 places. 6 with one goal. That's how tight it is at the bottom. So every time you think it's getting clearer, and I do think it has become a bit clearer with this weekend, but midweek might take us back again.
The bottom 3 at the moment are the bottom 3 that go down?
I think it's quite likely, but I'm gonna suggest that Alaves don't go down and Espanyol do.
It's unbelievable, Espanyol. I mean, it
really is. It's amazing. Absolutely extraordinary.
I didn't think they were terrible as well.
No, I don't think they're terrible. I had this conversation with them because I was sitting quite close to some of their staff at the weekend, and actually Javi Puado was sitting kind of just alongside me as well, a couple of seats to the right. And I was sort of saying, I watch you play, and I wasn't saying this to Javi Puado, by the way, but I was saying this to some stuff. I said, I watch you play, and I don't think you're awful. Like I said, the last 10 games or so, and one of them said to me, there's been 2, maybe 2 of the 10 games where we've been really, really, really bad. But mostly we compete. Mostly we're not massively overrun. It's true that there's a little bit of a mental block. But I said to the guys talking to them, but I watch you play. I don't even look at you as a team that's terrified. I said, yeah, the problem is we might be now. And I'm afraid, yeah.
With good reason as well. With good reason. When you're on this kind of run, you haven't won for 5 months. It is pretty terrifying. I'm just trying to get up who Espanyol have got actually, because this is.
So this is one of the things that was interesting.
So they've got Athletic Club at home, Osasuna away, and then their final game is Real Sociedad at home. I mean,
now here's the thing: all 3 of those are teams that are better than them.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously most teams are right now, but what I mean is all 3 of those are games that in the mid stage of the season you would say you don't win any of them. I think you say you don't win any of them. The thing is, Real Sociedad last game of the season, to use the old cliche, Real Sociedad already on the beach. You've got Athletic, you've got Osasuna away. Osasuna still maybe having to win to secure a European place, maybe. Yeah, it's plausible that they don't win any. It's plausible that they don't win any. Extraordinary
stuff, Sydney. Listen, we're going to leave it there. Before we go, this is what happened to the Segunda leaders. Racing won 2-1 at Leganés. They're 4 points clear at the top. Then it's Depor and Almeria, both on 71 points after Depor won 1-0 at Cádiz. And Almeria drew 0-0 at Burgos. Then it's a 5-point gap now to Malaga and Las Palmas, with Castellón, who drew at Ceuta, a further point back. We're over at patreon.com/TSFP for the rest of the week. Come and join us, €4.75 a month. Terrific value for the amount of content you get, not least the Q&A pod, which is coming up tomorrow as we answer all your questions, of which there are many, I'm sure. Thanks for the support, amigos, and thanks for listening. We'll speak soon. Adios.
Cheerio.